All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Looks like we got a decent crowd here, about 35 students, so that's good. So we're going to be going over a few questions if you've got them regarding the work on Monday. All right, we don't want to spend the entire time going over those problems exactly, but I'll be happy to field a few questions here in the first few minutes, and then we'll reserve the rest of your questions for office hours. So does anybody have a question specific to any of these problems from Monday? So let me just get to that real quick. So this was our worksheet for Monday, right? We did 1 and 3 together. You were supposed to do 2 and 4. Again, it's not due until Friday, but if you've got questions now about that, let me know. So let's see. Just see if I can get to my chat. Oops. All right. So the question is, what does part A of number 2 mean? All right, so let me just go back to that real quick so everybody can see it. So part A of number 2 says, write the equation for the height of the balloon in terms of the time since it was thrown. Part A for any of these is writing the equation, this equation. So you're going to fill in whatever this is, right? If the gravity, if they're talking about feet per second, you're going to use that 32. The initial velocity, right? Whatever that is. So in part A of number 2, they're looking for this equation. They're looking for the h equals whatever. So in this case, they're talking meters, so you're not going to use 32. You would use the 9.8. Okay, your initial velocity is highlighting downwards. Okay, that's because that should be a negative number when it's a downward velocity of 3 meters per second, and the initial height, it says, is 7 meters. Okay, so that would be how you would do part A. Part A for all of these is pretty much the same thing. Okay, let's see what else. I'm a little confused on how to do number 4 in general. Well, again, part A on these, let me just go back to it real quick. So number 4 has part A on number 4 is a little bit different because they've already given you the equation. Okay, now the difference between this equation and what they're showing you up here, see how it just says h in the formula, and in number 4 it says h of t. They're using function notation for this one instead of just a variable. It's the difference between y and f of x. So h of t, for example, would be just your h. Whoops, would be just your h. Okay, so what h of t means is what is the height at a particular time. Okay, so in, for example, part C where it says h of 2, that means what is the height at 2 seconds. Okay, the t is replaced with 2, so that means 2 seconds. On part D where it says h of t equals 50, well, you're just going to replace the h of t in that equation with 50 and then solve the equation. Okay, so A is asking you some things about this equation that we should be able to identify based off of what's there. So this number of -16 tells us something about whether we're talking about gravity as feet per second or gravity as meters per second. Okay, so that's what that first number is telling us. The second part of this, the 40, this plus 48, tells us that this is an initial velocity. Okay, the initial velocity here says plus? Well, if it's an initial velocity that's positive instead of negative, like in number 2, that initial velocity would be negative because they're throwing something downwards, right? That initial velocity being positive means that in this situation, the rock that they're throwing with the slingshot is shot upwards, okay? It's a positive initial velocity, which means they're shooting it up and not down, okay? In this plus 30, then, is the initial height. That's the h sub 0. So all of those numbers in that equation tell us something about the situation. Okay, this one tells us that they're talking about feet per second. This one tells us that we have an upward velocity of 48 feet per second, and that this is a initial height of 30. Okay, so each of those parts of the equation tell us something about the situation. All right, and so A and B are asking us about those different parts and to indicate units of measure and so on. Okay, so that's I know that's not answering any specific question, but hopefully that answers some general questions about that. So let me take a look at what we got chat-wise here. So let's see. Would A and B of number 2 be the same? And so let's go back and see if A and B of number 2 would be the same. So write an equation. That would be, again, writing this, okay? And then it says set up an equation to determine how long it will take for the balloon to hit the ground. The only difference between A and B is that you're now going to, instead of using H, right, you need to now change H to a number because they are indicating that how long it will take is we're going to be solving for T in this situation. So we need to know an H value on this side to solve for a T. Well, the H value when something is on the ground, right, because height is always relative to ground level. So height when something hits the ground then is 0. So the only difference between A and B is that this will have an H in A, right? This side will say H equals something. In B, it'll say 0 equals that same thing. Okay, so that's the difference between that. Let's not apologize for asking questions. That's why we have these sessions. And if you have more questions about specific parts of this, again, please come for office hours. We can talk about those more specifically together, a little bit more one-on-one. All right, so let's stop share on that. And before we get into today's work and some sort of general pieces to that, let's see, where is, let's see, find him. Let me get to Mia's question real quick, I think. Mia, I saw your hand just go down. Did I answer your question in there somewhere?
No, I thought you were just moving on, so I just wasn't gonna.
No, go ahead. No, so what's the question? Sorry.
Okay, so for number 4 on the answer key, the answers for part D, it says 0.5 and 1.5.
That is wrong.
It's 0.5 and 2.5, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
That was something else I was going to mention, actually. So I'm glad you asked the question because I was going to mention it here in a moment. But yes, that should say 2.5 and not 1.5.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. So let me get to. This would be a lot easier if I could search by name instead of by. Ah, there we go. All right, Kevin. Kevin, what's up? Kevin. Is Kevin there? Kevin is not there. He's too busy vibing, apparently. Oh, his mic doesn't work again. All right. So I'm going to fill you in on my conversation with Kevin in office hours. Part of our conversation in office hours was as we were working through number 4, we came across that error in the answer key. So that was one thing I was going to mention. So I'm glad that was already brought up by Mia. Thank you. The second thing Kevin and I discussed in office hours was, and you guys, I'm going to put a question in the form of a Google question form, just a Google form. It'll be a question about how you want to do your test, okay? Because Kevin and I just sort of jokingly started messing around and looking at some videos for different things, like because he was saying he was having trouble remembering the quadratic formula. So I said you should really just look for the quadratic formula song. And so we jokingly found this fine quadratic formula song. Let me go find it on YouTube again. Let's see here. Sorry, 1 second. Find the right one because it's just the best. So here it is. Let me share this screen real quick. All right, we're going here and we're going to share this fine. Hold on. All right, so that is excellent. Now, here is what Kevin and I discovered later, that there is actually all sorts of songs written for all of these different processes, okay? That the, oh, I didn't share the sound, sorry. I could sing it probably, but I don't think I'm going to. So you can look those things up, but here is my option for you. Okay, I'm going to provide you an option versus a, and you don't have to take it. It's not a requirement. Instead of a traditional test on Socrative, okay, which I'm still going to schedule for the 15th, so a week from this Friday. I'm going to give you an option to opt out of that test if you write a song about one of these processes, okay? So it's not going to be quite as simple as that one, okay? You have to do some explanation of the process and not just sing the tune for this. So what I will do is I will put together because this just kind of came up yesterday with a discussion Kevin and I were having, just sort of jokingly, but I'd actually thought it would be a kind of fun idea versus just, taking a test. So I'm going to offer it as a optional replacement for the test as a group. So the question is coming in, and I got a couple of hands coming up here. Can we work in pairs? Sure. I think that would be fine. I don't think I want more than pairs necessarily, but I don't see a problem with that situation. So I think that would be fine. Let me see. I'm not sure if that answered the question that I thought I saw. I thought I saw a hand. Let me see, did that hand go down? I think it did. So this will be, let me just check on her. Brooke, did that answer your question there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you. How are you, by the way? Doing good? Come on, don't mute yourself back there.
Okay, I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing good.
Sometimes I gotta talk to people. All right, cool, thanks, bye.
Bye.
All right. So I'll send more information on the rubric and things like that because like I said, this kind of just came up yesterday, so I got to come up with a rubric and sort of my expectations of what this will be. It won't be due on that Friday. It'll probably be due the following week, by the following Friday, the 22nd, I think is that. I'll give you a little bit more time to kind of come up with it and make a little video and whatever, right? If you want to make an animation or something like that, you can do that too. So here's what I would say. I would say explore some ideas on YouTube for this, because honestly, like when Kevin and I started kind of looking at them, or I actually started looking at them, I forced Kevin to watch them. That this was, they were kind of all over the place. Things about graphing, quadratic formula songs, probably there's completing the square. So any of the processes that we learned, factoring was certainly one that I found a couple of songs on. Some were not very good. There's a Gangnam Style song that's just terrible. Like it woke up all my dogs and brought my wife out of the other room asking me what I was doing. So some of these things are kind of fun. It's kind of funny. I'm not going to look for it to be terribly long, but it does have to have some explanation. Do you have to write the song? You have to write the lyrics, okay? You can use a song of any kind, but the lyrics, it'll be sort of a parody song, I guess. So that's what I would say. Just do some research. When I post the assignment possibility, I'll put some links to some songs that you can kind of use as a reference tool. Okay. Hannah says, do you have to sing? Kevin and I actually discussed this. I don't think you have to sing, but you have to find someone to sing. We thought that maybe you could even program Alexa to do something. But however you want to do it, all right? But yeah, there's got to be some musicality to this, and you don't have to do this, right? This is just an option instead of the test. So if you were somebody who's like, I'd just rather take the test and be done with it, you can do that, okay? But you'll need to make a decision before the test, and I'll put the, as I said, a Google form with the question of which one you want to do, so that I know. So let me go to Mia real quick. Yes, what's up, Mia?
So we're gonna be if we do this option, we're gonna have to make a video, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
So is that gonna be played for everyone to see, or just you?
Just me.
Okay.
If you think it's really good and you want me to share it in class or something, I can do that. But if you're just like, I'd just rather nobody see it but you, that's fine too.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So I think that's all the information I have on that. I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that will be an option for you, and that more information will be coming through EDSB on that option. Okay. So don't be like, what the heck is he talking about here? All right. So let's take a look back at today's work then. Let's get off of this YouTube. Hold on one second. Let's close. All right, so here we go. All right, so today's work, we've got oh, my cat is just really loud right now. So we've got, will this not show me what I want? All right, so we've got two problems very similar to what we were looking at on Monday. All right, so let me just go through these and kind of tell you like what they're looking for here, and how to best answer these. So a roofer tosses a piece of roofing tile from a roof onto the ground 30 feet below. He tosses the tile with an initial downward velocity of 10 feet per second. All right, again, when something is being thrown down, all right, it says it here, that it has an initial velocity that's negative. So when you are writing this formula of h equals negative 16 t squared plus vt plus h, right? They're just using the V and H instead of V sub 0 and H sub 0. And they're using a capital H instead of a regular H because they didn't use H sub 0 over here. Okay, but it's the same formula that we looked at. So for this, you're going to replace your initial velocity and your height. Okay, the height being how far he is off the ground. And then, so they want you to write that equation. Okay, then they want you to find out how long it takes the tile to hit the ground. So similar to the problem in number 2, right? This is part A, this is part B. Okay, where they want you to know how long it takes to hit the ground. So ground again being 0. So your H on this side of the equation, right, that capital H over as they're listing it will be 0, and then you solve that quadratic equation to find the amount of time it takes. Okay, questions on kind of how to set that up or what you're looking for, right? And this is, again, as I said on Monday, these types of problems are kind of the most common that you'll see for quadratic equation word problems, specifically on an EOC. Not that you guys are having to take it, lucky you, but those, if you were taking EOC, this is definitely what I would be stressing that you should be looking at in terms of your quadratic word problems, okay? Because they love these. Second one is, again, a physics problem. So Lupe tosses a ball up to Quinn, waiting on a 3rd-story window with a initial velocity of 30 feet per second, right? So she's tossing it up, so her initial velocity is a positive number. She releases the ball at a height of 6 feet, okay? So the equation they're showing you here is H equals negative 16t squared plus 30, that's the initial velocity of 30, and 6 feet is where she releases it, okay? So they're using that. If the ball must reach a height of 25 feet for her to catch it, does the ball reach Quinn? Explain. So this hint of substitute 25 for H is certainly true. I don't know why they're hinting to use the discriminant, okay? What you need to be able to do is, if you're gonna put this in 25, okay? Replace this with 25, move it to the other side so it's equal to 0. Then figure out where your vertex is. Okay, your vertex is always the maximum height. So if her maximum height is less than 25 feet, the answer to this is no. If the maximum height on that vertex is more than 25 feet, then the answer is yes. Okay, so you just explain using vertex information here. Okay, when they're talking height on any of these, that's always vertex information. Okay, will it reach this height? Okay, that's that type of question is vertex versus solving for time. Okay, so any questions on either of those two and how to set them up or solve them? All right, and we'll do this in groups here in a moment when we split up. All right, so these second two problems are also quadratic problems, but they're giving you quadratic equations here. So this one, negative n squared plus 2n plus 8 equals 0. All right, can be used to determine two numbers. And this is another type of problem. I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining how they come up with these equations and things like that, because this is not as common a problem. But what they want you to do is graph this function. Okay, so figure out where your vertex is. Remember to use your patterns, right? Of out 1, up 1, out 1, up 3, out 1, up 5. Okay, in this case, because it's a negative, it's not going to be out 1, up 1, it'll be out 1, down 1, out 1, down 3, out 1, down 5. Okay. Okay, and what you're looking for, part B, what are the two numbers, is where does that graph cross the x-axis? Okay, so your two numbers will be, I don't know if they'll both be positive or both be negative in this situation. I forget the answers to this off the top of my head, but you'll get two numbers where it will cross the y-axis or x-axis, okay? The x-axis zeros, where it crosses is your solution to that problem or solutions to that problem, okay? So make sure to graph, then tell me where is it crossing the x-axis. Okay, question on that problem at all? All right, so last one says a footbridge is suspended from a parabolic support. So what that means is if you think about a bridge that might kind of have that parabolic pattern and a bunch of supports from it, then you could kind of envision what they're talking about here. Okay, but this is just a footbridge instead of a bridge for cars or something. And they're giving you this function, okay, that represents the height in feet of the support above the walkway, okay, where x equals 0 represents the midpoint of the bridge. So the height at, or its tallest point, that vertex of the parabola, is where x is 0, okay? So they want you to graph that function first, okay? So that's what you'll want to do. So make sure that you're using your parabolic patterns here. And this one's a little tricky because of the 1/25th. So we'll want to pay attention to our pattern changes a bit. But what we first need is just the vertex is going to be this number because we have no middle term. When we have no middle term, the C is our vertex. So our vertex is going to be at 9 on that. Okay. And then we'll go out from there. All right. And it says, and determine its x-intercepts. All right. Well, I don't know that we're going to be able to be specific enough about our x-intercepts from the graph because of this weird coefficient on the front, the negative 1/25th. So we'll probably want to use the quadratic formula to actually determine our x-intercepts, okay? So we'll want to use A is negative 1/25th, we'll want to use B is 0, and we'll want to use C is 9, okay? So we'll use our quadratic formula versus the graph to determine the x-intercepts. Okay, so technically 2 parts to this, sort of a sketch of the graph, and then determine its x-intercepts using quadratic formula. Part B says what is the length of the walkway between the 2 supports. Okay, so what we're going to find then is whatever our 2 x-intercepts are. So let's say it's, I don't know, negative 12 and 12. I don't know if that will be it, but let's just say it is. Okay, so the distance between those 2 points is the distance of the walkway. Okay, so if it was negative 12 and 12, our distance of our walkway would be 24. Okay, so once you find your 2 x-intercepts, you're just calculating the distance between those 2 points. Okay, questions on that last problem? All right, so we should get a graph here. This one's going to be a much simpler graph to graph, just a sketch of this graph, x-intercepts through quadratic formula, and then determining distance between those 2 points that we find. All right, so let's go ahead and stop share here. Any questions before we go into, let's see here. Let me just, looks like I've had some questions come in. All right, so I got somebody asking me about doing a group versus just a pairs project. I think I would like to keep it to just 2 at most, all right, because otherwise it becomes difficult for me to determine exactly how much anybody has contributed, since you can't necessarily get together to do these projects. It becomes more difficult. So I think I'm just going to keep it to 2 as a pair. And let me go to Courtney real quick, because Courtney's question I'm not quite clear on. So let me just get to her if I can locate her. There we go. Yes, Courtney, what's up?
Can you show us, like, write out what you're saying? Because it feels like you're just kind of talking at it. I don't really see what you're trying, like, what we're supposed to do. Because you're just telling us about it, but, like, I don't understand because I can't see it. Can you write out? I mean, not saying do it for us, but kind of.
Well,
like
if I'm writing it,
out.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but again, if I'm writing it out, I am basically doing it for you at that point. Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, we can, well, like when we get into groups, you can ask me to maybe be a little more specific on things, but I think for right now, I'm just going to break into groups, and then we can maybe ask or answer some more specific questions in those settings. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so let's see. I've got about 35 here, so just gonna let this split up into, let's see, get people dropping. Let me see where we stand after everybody's dropping off here. All right, so all right, I'm gonna do about 4 rooms right here, I think. All right, so we'll see how that works out. Oh my gosh, it's so noisy, cat. What did you say? All right. So here we are, Courtney.
Hello. I'm still miserably confused. So.
Don't be. You'll be fine. Which question do you have a question on?
All of them.
All of them?
I mean, I kind of understand it, but I just don't know what to write.
All right, so let's look at this one real quick. Let me get to sharing this screen. All right. So if we are looking at number 1, number 25, whatever number you want to call that. We have, hold on a second, Bryson. Bryson, you want to go work in the other room? Is that what you're indicating? Okay, hold on. All right, there we go. All right, so on this one, that's great. 25. So part A says write the equation for how long it takes the tile to hit the ground, right? So all you're doing with this equation, first of all, is you need to fill in the v and the initial velocity and the initial height. And then you need to fill in this with what number?
With
If it's hitting the ground, what should the number of at height be?
0.
Right. So you would have 0 equals what?
Negative 16r squared.
T
Let's
squared.
see. Oh, yeah, okay. And then for using the velocity, so then 10 t,
Yeah.
and then where's the other? 30
Yep.
plus 30.
Yeah. So that's the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then part B is how long does it take to hit the ground? That's just solving that equation.
Okay. I think I get that one now.
I'm gonna go check on this other room. Give me a shout if you need help again.
Hello, Mr. Peters.
All right, so everybody's in this room now, I think. So all of you who have stuck around will get extra dojo points here.
Yay.
Yay.
We're using the quadratic formula to solve it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just got 1,920. That doesn't seem right. Should I have factored? I'm a factor. That sounds about really
For-
big number.
For your equation?
For part B?
Well, for part B, you have to, like, if you didn't factor, you'd be multiplying 16 times 30 times 4. I'm a
Yeah.
factor. Let me factor that.
Wait, what did you guys get for 25B?
I haven't figured it out.
Oh, I'm still figuring it out, but I'm
Yeah.
almost done.
I don't think I did it right.
I'm just
Are we
stuck
supposed
on
to be getting whole numbers, or can we have
Mm.
decimals?
You're probably going to get a decimal somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I think.
It's supposed to have two numbers, correct? Or just
Yeah, I'm
one?
pretty sure.
Okay.
I'm getting 2 right now.
You should get 2. I think you're only going to use 1 because 1's going to be a negative number.
Yeah.
True.
Okay, guys. I think I
I
got
didn't
it.
get a negative number for B. Okay, wait. Sky, what'd you get?
Okay, so for one of them, I got x equals negative 63.44. And then for another one, I got 62.81.
I got the exact same thing.
Okay.
That seems really like a long time. That's
What?
Yeah, I'm kind of confused. I got a really big number. I got the -5 and then the 505 and a radical over -16.
okay. So let's talk about what you have for part A to begin with.
I had H equals negative 16 squared t squared plus 10t plus 30. I mean,
Shouldn't-
yeah.
Shouldn't be plus 10.
Yeah, I got negative
Dang
10.
it. That's
Oh, sorry.
never mind. That explains a lot, though.
Yeah, true. Well, not really.
Party girl, she
'Cause you would
wanted to
just-
find- Do you have the answers with you, Mr. Peters?
No, not offhand.
You could factor it by 2, right?
I got the exact same
Yeah.
thing. It's just negative and a positive. Or they're both negatives, actually.
So what are you getting in the discriminant then?
What discriminant? What?
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Sorry, Mr. Peters.
In the radical on the quadratic equation, that's the discriminant, the b squared minus 4a.
Yeah. So to start off, once I put like my actual equation together, like in the quadratic formula, I got 10 plus or minus the square root of 10 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 30 divided by 2 multiplied by negative 16.
Yeah, same.
Okay, and
Then-
what does that give you?
It would be 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 plus 1,920 divided by negative 32. And then
Which was
simplify that
2000. Which was 2020
Yeah, 2020. And then.
in the discriminant.
Mhm.
I'm so confused. And then from there I did 10 plus 2020 over negative 32. And
Same.
then I did
You're
You're
x
doing the square
equals-
root first. You got to take the square root first.
But there is no square root.
Oh, I
There's an
did forget to do
estimate.
that. I forgot
Okay.
to.
In class.
Darn. But,
90.
But, okay, so I factored it out by 2, so then I was dealing with like 5, 8, 4, and say 15. But, I got 505, and there's no square root of 505.
Well, you can take the square root on your calculator and get an estimate.
So I'll just use a decimal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't forget that you're dividing by negative 32, or if you're Courtney, negative
Yeah.
16.
Yep. Ugh. Oh wait, that was a mistake.
Oh, okay, wait.
It makes a lot more sense now because it's now a lot smaller. What the
Yeah.
heck? Why did it just do that? Now somehow I got 45. What is happening? My calculator hates me.
Mr. Peters,
Okay,
how
I
is
got
one of your answers? Oh, wait, no, I know. That makes sense now. Wait, yes, it does. Okay. Ah, crap.
What the heck? Wait, where are the answers? Question mark?
There aren't any.
What the heck?
I didn't post an answer key.
But I can't check my work then.
So,
Well.
correct me if I'm wrong. One of them is negative 3.6 and the other one is 6.4.
No.
Okay,
No.
wait. Is it
Was I close?
44.63. How did that happen?
Wait, Mr. Reese, is it? I mean, Mr. Peters. My bad.
Whoa.
Sorry.
I'm bald, but that's about it.
Okay, wait. So, is it x equals negative 1.72 for one of them?
Yes, that's what I got.
And then
That would be
x,
one of them.
And then x equals 1.09.
Yes, that's the one you
Yes.
want.
Okay.
How did
Why do you
The
want
negative
that
one
one?
doesn't make sense. Because it's a negative
yeah.
time. You don't want negative time.
Okay.
Mr. Peters, I am so
Don't get mad at
confused.
me.
I'm not mad. I'm just saying negative time doesn't make sense.
You're mad at me.
I'm so confused.
What are you confused
Too.
about?
This whole entire thing, I'm just so confused. I don't understand it.
I got both were negatives. How did that happen?
So, where are you lost? Like, did you get lost? Do you have the initial?
On the first
equation?
question.
What?
On the first question.
Okay, but do you have the initial equation? Like, because they're working on part B. Did you get part A?
No, I don't know what it is.
How do we find that? If it says use the model for vertical motion, that's height equals negative 16t squared plus v is our initial velocity times t plus h is our initial height. So you need to plug in v and the h from what they tell you initially.
Ugh.
Are we doing all of these problems? Like all
Yeah.
4?
Yeah.
Ouch. Ouch.
Oh, okay.
Whoa, that was scary.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Peters, real quick about the song, if we're doing that as opposed to the test, can
Yeah.
we make our own music? Because I play the ukulele.
I suppose.
Okay.
I have a ukulele. It's right there.
Do you know how to play it?
No. I can play the guitar, but I haven't figured out I bought a ukulele hoping that I would learn how to play it, but I can't.
Listen, I have no idea how to play the guitar, but I know how to play the ukulele. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, one has 4 strings and is tiny. The other
Yeah.
has 6 and is not. So
One is a baby guitar, the other one's a guitar.
yeah.
Just ask, what did we establish that number 25b is?
What?
What did we establish that number 25b is?
1.09 seconds.
How did you get that, though? That's the question.
Well, you get negative 1.72 seconds or 1.09 seconds, and Mr. Peters said no
Well,
negative.
I know that, but, like, how did you get the numbers?
Oh, I did 44.95 plus 10 divided by negative 32 and
Okay.
44.95 minus 10 over negative 32, and that gives you those numbers.
All of these numbers are super big for no reason.
See. Yeah, why are all these numbers so big? They're mean. Can't do any of them.
So one of the answers is negative 8.6, and then
For
yeah,
what?
for B.
No.
Courtney,
No,
what
wait.
number are you getting in your radical?
In the radical, I decided factoring wasn't working out, so it's 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have the 10, and then you do the thingy, and you get 44.9, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you have 10 plus 44.9.
No,
divided.
it wouldn't be 44.9.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
yeah,
because if 5 rounds up.
that's a 4. It's 44.944410,
True.
whatever.
My bad.
So
I was
it would
looking
not
at-
round up. So then you have the 10. Let's say we're doing the plus 1 plus 44.9 divided by negative 32. It would make it a negative number, right? Because you're adding, and then so then you'd get negative 8.6.
How are you getting negative 8?
Yeah.
I think, Courtney, you're doing it all as one step on your calculator, aren't you?
No.
Are you doing 10 plus 44.9 divided by negative 32?
Yeah, and you equal 54.9 divided by negative 32. Oh, never mind. But then you get x equals 171 instead of negative or plus.
It's 1.71, and then it
Yeah.
would round up because.
But it's negative, so
2.
you don't want that one.
Yeah.
No, that one's okay. And then the other one.
Wow, I just messed up that bad. That's
Wait a
upsetting.
minute. That's not right.
All right, guys, it is 1 o'clock. I
Ooh,
see some of you at office hours in a little while.
okay.
Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow or Friday morning before 11 is also office hours, 9 to 11 for me on Friday. But we're going to go ahead and wrap this up so we can get it uploaded, and I'll see you guys later.
Okay,
Bye.
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 Thank you.